We were in this transition period, and between that and the pandemic, there was, it was hard to keep a cohesion.
We didn't have a pastor nor the money to call a pastor. Thought of different ways that we could change our church to make it work, and it seemed like the changes made just did not work.
I think we were a little lost. I think we needed to make some choices.
Ezekiel 37, that story of the prophet Ezekiel, and God sort of transports him into a valley of dry bones. And then all of a sudden he has this vision, and they start coming together, bones on bones, muscle on muscle, skin on skin, until he sees the restoration of his people. Holy Fork in the Road work is like that, is that we tend to get to a point where all we can see is the end. But the end actually in our Christian faith leads to the beginning. And that's the story of resurrection.
Holy Fork in the Road Ministries is a ministry that invites congregations to deep discernment about where God might be calling them next.
Prayerful discussion and decision when you're at a fork in the road.
When we talk about fork in the road, we're really talking about three different directions. The decision that we're trying to avoid is the one that involves doing nothing. We don't want congregations to stagnate.
Really what it is, it's a framework for making a decision and trying to understand what each one of those decisions meant.
To go down the resurrection path and close your church, to create a legacy.
That one is one where you basically take all of the gifts from, the monetary assets to the building to the people, and preparing them and using them for, whatever we've discerned that God is calling that community to do elsewhere.
Or rebirth. Talk about it as a radical change, to just do something totally different.
And so when we say rebirth, it's from the ground up, and out is the big piece of that.
We met Pastor Jay. He had a very soothing way and a very realistic way of telling us what's going on. He didn't tell us, he let us figure it out, which we quickly did. But he was very supportive in our decision. The process was painful. We all cried. I mean, we're a family. We were a family since I'd been there, since I walked in the door.
And I think we went through it all. I think if you had talked to any of the leadership last summer, you would be hearing a very different story. We were sad. We were desperate.
The fact of us losing one another was just heartbreaking, because we really, we looked at ourselves as a family, as a strong family too.
With Pastor Jay's leadership, we were able to turn that around and find the good in the closing.
People don't want to talk about their own deaths, but we recognize that it's natural. But really, nobody wants to talk about the fact that it's natural for churches to die. And I think it's because it feels almost sacrilegious to say that. Like, it feels like you must not trust God if you are admitting that a church could die.
Death isn't failure, and Jesus comes to this world and lives our whole life and dies our death so that we can know that death isn't the end of the story. It is part of the story, and it's not the end.
We spent a long time working through the process of death, and you work through that. It is sad, but we created such beauty out of it. We are creating a legacy that's going to help thousands. I can't view that as a bad thing.
Pastor Jay led us down that trail of what do we want to see, what do we want to do, how does our church serving the community?
We created an endowment. We donated to organizations that we spent a lot of time picking that aligned with the things we valued as a community.
There's the sad part of a closure, but there is the victory of doing something that can help your community even in a time of loss. Our task force heard that there was going to be this donation by Lord of Life Lutheran Church of half of what we needed for 2 duplexes for temporary housing for the homeless people in our community.
One of our founding members had lunch with someone from this place called Barnabas Connection, which is our umbrella nonprofit for Wimberley for emergency services and children's services. We made an agreement to sell the church to them, and now it's an emergency shelter where the sanctuary is, which was what makes me happy about closure, is that the building really is being used, and God knew it.
We will take all of what we've learned through this process and at Lord of Life and through our closing. And, we're the seeds. And now we all get to go out to a different church and share what we've learned and what we've been through.
Your story and the directions that you shape and make, other congregations are going to look at that and say, we never thought that was possible. And so it untethers people from that stuckness.
Not many people go through a church closing for a year almost and come out seeing hope.
Well, I actually really believe strongly that the Holy Fork in the Road isn't just for congregations in a certain kind of crisis. I think it's for everyone. I think any congregation at any stage of its life cycle could pick up this process and benefit from it, because it does help us think about taking the next step with intention.
The ministry itself is not closing churches. Nobody comes in with the intention of saying, I'm here, now you can close. This is really an opportunity for me to sit with churches and offer them space and place to discern, and then just reflect back to them what it is that I heard.
Seeing Lord of Life go through this has made us realize that this is a really important conversation for us to have. It doesn't matter that we are a young congregation and we're healthy and, we feel like we can keep going for a long time. We still have to make that plan. You need to know what matters to you so that you can live the rest of your life with those things at the forefront.
And that really, I think, is the gift of the Holy Fork in the Road process, is it holds a space to say, it feels like it's time to choose something. There are multiple pathways in front of us. What would it look like to actually try to name them and describe them and choose one? Not because there's only one right one, but just because we would be walking into the next chapter with some intention.
This is not a matter of we're not a vital congregation, right? This is not saying that at all. This is saying that God has something in store for you, even if you're at that end of stage part. But how will that lasting legacy be? How will you choose to walk with that gracefully, purposefully, and with a sense that will continue to heal and bless people?
You don't have to be going through hard times in an effort to look at if what we're doing right now is something worthy of lifting up as a potential legacy for a community. Is there conflict in the community? That's a good time to invite Holy Fork in the Road in. Is there joy in the community? That's a great time to invite Holy Fork in the Road ministry in, because maybe that's something that we want to lean into. Maybe that becomes a story that informs someone else.
My only disappointment is we didn't do this earlier, because then some of these other decisions, other options, would actually be more feasible.
When you see the first signs, don't wait. You might be able to take a different path than you were thinking.
The Synod is going in and it has this resource to say, if you're interested in having a Holy Fork in the Road conversation, if you want to help map out the direction of where God's calling you, why would we do this alone? You're not asking this alone. We have the resources. So let's walk together as we navigate that.